Hello, everyone. I only have 20 minutes, so I'm going to start actually 1 minute early. Thank you all for coming. I know there's a lot of awesome sessions happening, and I know sometimes governance and policies and standards isn't the most exciting topic. And again, this is the first time I'm actually speaking at an open source conference as well. So hopefully this has never been covered at an open source. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so hopefully this is new. Hopefully it's something that everyone's going to get something out of today. And I always like, keep calm and govern on. That's I thought I'd name this because as we see today and we've seen all week, there's so many cool things happening. We don't want governance, we don't want standards, we don't want policies to try to slow that down. So just jump right in. Okay, so brief introduction on myself. So I was a developer in a previous life, long time ago. If we have any Canadians in here, any Canadians in here? Oh, nice. Yeah, so if you ever go to a dental office, probably my code and my stored procedures are still running in that. So that was a long time ago. But right now, work at TD, heading up the open source program office there. Been there since January, so still very, very new. And just a warning, like there's a lot of Canadian content on here. So if there's any issues with that, then that's too bad. So previous to that, I was at Canadian Tire. And what I have to explain about Canadian Tire is we don't just sell tires, and anyone who spends time in Canada knows that's kind of funny. So Canadian Tire is a bank, it's a gas company, it's a retail company, we have ports, we have warehouses with robots running along. Anything, everything that people have seen, I've probably seen at Canadian Tire. And there I was trying to bring together governance and bringing together innovation. Big part of that was AI. So previous to that, I was at the home of open source, so GitHub. And before that, I was at CIBC, where I was in audit. And again, don't hold that against me. Oh, we have an auditor here. Oh, nice. Nice. Okay, good. Yeah. So again, we're people too. Like, auditors are people too. We're not scary. We're nice. Doing DevOps at a bank as well, and also scaling our microservices platform as well. So just a little brief of who TD is, because primarily we're in Canada and on the East Coast, so a lot of people may not know who TD is. But we are the 6th largest bank in North America. And like me, because I'm a dual citizen, like we are in Canada and the US, but also in Europe, also in Asia, I think in South America too, but don't quote me on that. So we're all over the world. So any regulations, any compliance, anything that we've heard this week with regards to things that may affect open source from all over the world, I have to deal with. And again, we have 28 million global customers, about 95,000 people working at TD. 5,000, I've heard 5,000 to 7,000 developers. Anyways, we have a lot of them. Very interesting thing that I really like is we have a lot of community outreach. Last year, we spent $169 million on those community outreaches. If I come back next year, I want to add something in there where part of that $169 million is going to the open source community. So that's one of the things I'm working on there. I've only been there 6 months. But I want open source to be part of the communities that we take care of. So diving right in. So today, in our brief time, we're going to look at 3 governance patterns that should help people keep pace with all the open source innovations that we're hearing about this week, especially with all of the regulatory scrutiny. Me, like I'm a big fan of patterns and laws, so like Conway's Law, Brooks' Law. Anyone in here has read The Mythical Man Month? That book? Yeah, we got one? Okay, good. I'm a big fan of patterns and laws, especially the ones like Brooks' Law and Conway's Law that has stood the test of time. And the one good thing is, like, I'm talking about how they can apply to open source, but these patterns can be applied to general governance as well. And so the 3 patterns we're going to look at is, so right side's governance, so right-sized guardrails and oversight. Frequency reduces difficulty, if anyone's familiar with Martin Fowler's pattern, which I'll go into. And the last one is kind of my favorite one, is there is no conflict. And so diving right in, right-sized guardrails and oversight. So I like to call this the San Mateo Bridge metaphor. So anyone from the Bay Area, worked in the Bay Area, been over the San Mateo Bridge. So you all know, starts off like this, and then it goes way up, and then you're up there for a while, and it goes down again. So the metaphor I like to kind of use as part of my definition is just create just enough governance and oversight to minimize the big risk. And if you add too much oversight, it's actually going to increase the risk. And I think any of us who have been on the San Mateo Bridge knows that those guardrails are pretty short. So I know growing up as a kid, I always forced my dad to go into the middle because we had a van, so I could like look up and see the ocean. So I was a bit scared, but like those guardrails are set up to be short enough to make sure people don't go over. And right now there's one automated tolling station. And I think people who are old enough to know, maybe in their 50s like me or 40s, knows that there used to be people there, and there used to be people in the toll stations at the Bay Bridge and Golden Gate Bridge, but now it's all, you just basically go through and it scans your car. The last thing is adding more toll stations would actually increase the risks. So if you actually had a toll station, say at the top there, that would actually cause a pretty big increase of risk, because what you would have is cars stop there, and if someone is speeding and someone crashes into it, hey, they could go over the side. So what does this look like from a practical application standpoint? So the lightweight governance and standards and policies, there's a very simple way to make sure that that happens, and that is be involved with writing them. So within an enterprise like a bank, like I have the opportunity to be involved in writing our standards and policies and controls. And there's lots of examples, lots of great things that I've been using from the Linux Foundation, from Finos and others. And the other thing is, if you're not in an opportunity to write them and be a part of that, be a part of a lot of the things that have been talked about this week, is the standards that are being written within the community. And this is something that Jim mentioned on Monday in his keynote, is open source and standards are coming together now, where previously I don't think they were connected as much. But now we don't really have a choice. With CRA, with DORA happening in Europe, with everything happening in the States now, everyone looking at SBOMs and all that, like we have to bring this together. And one of the best ways to make sure that it gets done right is to have people like us involved with it. The other thing is, within your software supply chain, and like maybe this is just at big companies, I don't know if it's the same at smaller companies and startups, is there's a concept of separation of duties. So as we have a fellow auditor here, so I'm sure there's been lots of conversation with separation of duties. The key thing I just want to call out here is there needs to be automation in that. So policies in a lot of big companies, a lot of banks, even at, I think, IBM, their separation of duty policies focus on humans, a person, where technically it should be a function. And the key thing with that is a function can be automated, right? You're still going to have human oversight, but you have a lot of functions in your software supply chain that could be automated. So anyways, these are just two practical applications. Next pattern is frequency reduces difficulty. So anyone familiar with Martin Fowler and his work? Any hands? Oh, we got one, okay. So he has a famous, or maybe not so famous if no one's heard of him, pattern for DevOps, which is frequency reduces difficulty. And the example that he uses is going to the gym. If you go to the gym once a year, you're probably not going to be able to walk, for like a week or so. But if you go all the time, it becomes easier. You're less sore. So anyways, this can be extended to governance and audit, where those engagements can be less painful and again, for the auditors as well, because like it's hard for us to do that. They can be less painful if they become continuous, and the more continuous they actually become easier. So I think we're all familiar with CI/CD and GitOps principles of the continuous reconciliation. So they can be extended to governance and controls and audit as well. And if you can constantly meet those requirements, then whenever audit comes along, whenever you have those reviews come along, things get easier. So practical example of this. Open source microservices framework example. So back in my time at CIBC, I took over the group that created this framework. And I don't know if we have any Istio service mesh people in here. Anyone? No? Okay. So I'll kind of cover it quickly. But so essentially, it was a pre-Istio service mesh. And so with governance and compliance, we treated them as cross-cutting concerns that were injected into the services. So the way that you could kind of think of it as an extension of the Kubernetes sidecar pattern, which is essentially you're able to inject stuff into your services without having to change the service, without having to rewrite the code. So what we did is we injected standards, controls, policies into the services, leveraging that sidecar pattern. And what we also did is we actually rewrote our standards, controls, and policies. And again, this is using the pattern that I just said. And so anywhere where that service went, the standards, the controls, the audit, whatever, the cross-cutting concerns went with it. And in the keynote today, I actually updated this slide based on it's like all your base are belong to us. So that was covered this morning. And you know how they had the slide where they had like the stack of policies and controls, and at the top they had audit? So we did this back in 2017 and 2018. And again, I just want to refocus on why it's important that banks like us are part of these communities, because a lot of the things that the community is working on are solved problems. The problem is, generally, banks don't do a good job of sharing stuff. And anyone in here who works at a bank knows that that's usually the case. So yeah, I see a hand back there. So again, this is just a reiteration why it's important that like banks like TD and other banks are involved in these communities, because we can help because we've done this before. It's just unfortunately we haven't been able to share it. So last point here is governance and compliance became easy. And I don't want to say it's as easy as pressing the easy button, but it was pretty close, because when we had like a line of business audit, and I'm not going to go into that because it's super boring, but whenever there was questions about those services, about audit, what we did is we pointed them to our standards and controls and policies, and we said, we're following this, and we just referenced in the code what we were pointing to and said, here is your audit artifact. And our audit group loved it because, one, we didn't have to do a bunch of walkthroughs and taking screenshots of stuff, which hopefully none of you have to go through except my audit friend here. But it's really painful, really time-consuming, so auditors love this stuff as well. So long story short, all your base are belong to us. Like whatever they covered in the keynote, it can be done. It can be done in highly regulated companies. And again, if you can do that, if every time your CI/CD pipeline, something goes through it and you're meeting that stuff, this stuff becomes easy. Doesn't go away, it's just key, but when it does come up, it becomes easy. So lastly, I just want to do a time check here. Okay, got 7 minutes. So this is my last Canadian content. Keona Reeves is Canadian. Hopefully everyone knew that. If not, that's okay. But this is the last pattern. There is no conflict. And for all of us who have taken the red pill, I think we all have, right? Like, we know the matrix, we're in the matrix, we could see it, right? Everyone took the red pill? Okay, I guess so. But the key thing here is do not try and take on enterprise and regulatory governance on your own. That's impossible. You're going to get crushed if you try to do that. You can't do it on your own. Only try to realize the truth. There is no conflict between governance and innovation. This is a hard sell sometimes when you see something like CRA and you look at those millions of list of things that you have to do. But again, what was covered this morning is if you can somehow codify it. You can somehow link the controls to what you're doing in your CI/CD pipeline, and audit becomes easy, and those controls become just part of your CI/CD pipeline. Like, there really is no conflict. And again, going back to Neo here, he would never be able to bend the spoon until he changed his perspective. So if people try to take on this governance stuff, all the regulation on your own, trust me, you will get crushed. Like, there's no way to do it. There's just too much going against you. So you just have to change your perspective a little bit, understanding that it's not there to slow down innovation. And again, there's a lot of debate there. But going back to the illustrations, and here's my Simpsons reference, Brittany, just so you were wondering. So again, right-sides governance and oversight can help ensure conceptual integrity and ensure great ideas turn into business value. So any Simpsons fans in here besides Brittany? We got, okay. So Homer's car had some great ideas that were actually implemented later on in other cars. So one of his great ideas is where you put your coffee cup should be big. So you can put your coffee there and drive. So all of us now, when we're driving, we could thank Homer because we have a nice place to put our coffee cup. The problem with Homer's car is there was no conceptual integrity and there was no alignment to business value. There was no governance with regards to all of these great ideas and how they're going to be implemented. And key thing, from an illustration standpoint, I have to talk about AI. It's mandated that we all talk about AI for every presentation. So we need to ensure that there's safeguards and human oversight with AI. Because I think we've all seen The Matrix. We all know what could possibly go wrong. But it's key because without governance, without oversight, without controls in the world of AI, and we've all been hearing about it this week, bad things can happen. And so again, going back to this slide, there is no conflict because if we don't have these governance and we don't have the oversight, we're going to end up with a lot of Homer cars out there, a lot of companies that are going bankrupt because they don't have that oversight. And who knows what's going to happen with AI? Maybe we're going to have agentic AIs that attend conferences like this next year, and all of us are who knows where. So just conclusion, thank you again for coming here. I didn't have that much time. And just, opening it up, anyone who wants to connect with me over LinkedIn, anyone who wants to chat with me afterwards, if you have any questions about governance, controls, audit, even OSPOs as well, I'm here. Reach out anytime as well. Thank you.